Yes, you. Welcome to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast, a podcast for people who want to disrupt their lives for a good reason, to make it count. I'm your host, Jen Glantz, and every week I'll drop a new episode with stories from real people just like you, who woke up one morning and decided to make big changes, starting with small things. We'll cover topics like entrepreneurship, love, failure, and self-care. Hey, you're not getting any younger, so let's make this an adventure. Ready? Today's episode is brought to you by Jen and Juice Coaching by yours truly. For the past 5 years, I've worked with over 100 people to help them feel, less stuck. Whether you're looking to change careers, start a side hustle, or just get a strategy for your life, head on over to jenglantz.com/coaching and you can find out about my 1-hour coaching specials that will help you feel like you can finally cross those things off your to-do list and start whatever kind of project, life change, or dream that you have. Hey, any youngers, it's me, your host, Jen Glantz, back with another episode of the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. What is going on? We're climbing toward the end of the first month of 2021, and it feels like a whole lot of things. All I know is that right now I am being accompanied by my dog, Goofy, who has certain words that just trigger her, that make her ears perk up, that make her think that we are going on an adventure. And one of those words is, let's go. I'm like whispering it. I don't want her to hear it. But right when I started recording the podcast, I said, let's go. And she just stood up from the bed. She was in a deep nap and thought that we were going to go to the park. So I'm recording this episode feeling a little weird that Goofy is disappointed in me and that she does not understand that the phrase let's go can mean so many other things. But we're here together, and today's episode is part of the PickMeUp series, which is a new series that I started for the podcast where once a month I am taking questions from you, my dear listeners, on things you need a pick-me-up for. Now, these could be things in your life that you find challenging or confusing or that you just need a friend's advice on. And you can send these to me in many different ways. You can send me a pick-me-up through a DM on Instagram at @JenGlantz. You can send me a pick-me-up question at jenglantz@gmail.com. Or you can drop me a voice message, which I would love to hear from you, at speakpipe.com/JenGlantz. And I'll drop that in the show notes below so that if you want to leave that voicemail, you will know exactly where to go. But the point of this episode is to answer some of the questions that you have about your life that perhaps other people listening also have for their own. We're going to tackle 3 of the questions that were sent in for this month. And each of these questions have different topics, different categories that they're associated with. Number 1 is around friendship. Number 2 is around motivation. And number 3 is around personal fear. So I'm going to read you the question, and then I'm going to spend a little bit of time answering it from my perspective and giving a little bit of advice. And by the way, if you're into these pick-me-ups, then this type of episode is going to be for you. And again, it's going to drop once a month for you to listen to as part of the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. You can also get more pick-me-up content on my Monday newsletter that I send out every Monday at 6 a.m. And I am dropping a link for that in the show notes as well. So you can click on that and subscribe. And every Monday, you'll get even more pick-me-up advice so that you can jump out of bed and feel like your best self. Question number 1 comes from Joanna, and she says, "Hey Jen, I need a pick-me-up because for the past year, I have felt so lonely. A lot of my friends live out of town, live in other countries, and I feel like I spent a lot of quality time alone. And frankly, Jen, I am sick of it. But I know that part of friendship is making an effort, yet I have trouble being the one to do that. How in the world do I feel more confident picking up the phone and calling these people when I just feel like I'm always bothering them? Help me, Jen. Pick me up. What do I do?" Well, first of all, Joanna, this is a question that hits home because pre-pandemic, I was just like you. I never picked up the phone to call my friends, to FaceTime them. I was also known to my friends as the world's worst texter. Sometimes it would take me like 10 days to respond to a simple "how are you" text. And that's just because I spend a lot of time on my phone, but I spend a lot of time wasting time on my phone. And sometimes I miss those texts. But the reason why I never picked up the phone to call my friends was something that you feel right now. This feeling of annoying them, of being intrusive, of trying to video chat them in the middle of the day and them just thinking, oh, why is Jen, why is Joanna calling me? But here's the thing. If we don't try, we don't know. And if we don't try, how are we showing up in that friendship? And I realized through my inaction, I wasn't showing up very well at all. Because I was so scared to call people probably thought that I was busy or that I was living my own life or that they didn't matter to me. But I'll be honest with you, Joanna, picking up the phone and calling people over the last year has been hard. It's been scary. Sometimes I will make every excuse not to. But you know what feels the worst? Is when that person finally picks up the phone and calls you. And then the next week they call you again. And then 3 weeks later they call you again and you thought, you know what, Jen, you never reciprocated. You never called them. Friendship is very much like the cliche of ping pong or tennis that you both are showing up. You're not, necessarily keeping track, keeping score, but you're both putting in effort. It's like any relationship. If one person is putting in the effort, the relationship will crumble, will fail. So one of the things I did, and I like to be very strategic, I like to have my to-do list for my to-do list, is I made a list of people who matter in my life. And I also wrote on that list the last time that I made the effort to reach out to them. And I started to document, okay, did I text these people this week just to check in and say hi? Do I owe a person a phone call just because I missed them and I want to reach out to them? And honestly, on my list this week, on my to-do list, it said, call a certain friend. And it took me so long to get that item checked off my to-do list. But I picked up the phone and I called that person. And it was scary at first. I thought I was bothering them. And then I realized if this person was busy, they wouldn't answer. They would call me back. And I called this person. It turns out they were busy, but they answered anyway. And we spoke for a couple minutes. They told me they had to run because they were going to do something else. And we'd catch up again soon. And it wasn't bothersome for them. I could hear it in their voice that they were happy to hear from me. We caught up over text later on. The point being is don't talk yourself out of doing something that you know you want to do and that you know could really be great for the other person. I mean, think about yourself. Most of the time people call you, they text you, you don't feel like, oh, this person again. You feel happy that somebody thought of you. You feel grateful that somebody wants to speak to you. So maybe think about this. Who in your life do you want to hear from? Who in your life do you want to reach out to? Pick one person and pick up the phone right now as you're listening to this and give them a call. If they don't answer, fine. If they do, say, hey, I don't have anything I want to talk to you about. I just want to say hi and I miss you. What's new? And they might feel weird at first too, but hey, this is friendship in 2021, my friend. We got to put ourselves out there. And the worst thing that can happen is they send you to voicemail. And is that the worst thing? A lot of times when we call people, we cross our fingers for voicemail anyway. But either way, remember that. You not calling is you not showing up in that friendship. And even if it scares you, you will get over that fear, that feeling of awkwardness after the first minute or two. Cheering you on, Joanna. Thanks for submitting your pick-me-up. Topic number 2 comes from Christina. Christina says, Jen, I desperately need a pick-me-up because I have started this year like a snail. I've never felt less motivated. I feel like I'm approaching things in a really slow pace. I can't seem to get anything done. Most of the time, I spend my time doing work and watching Netflix. Yet I have a whole list of goals that make me happy that I want to pursue, but I can't seem to bring myself to go ahead and do them. Jen, pick me up, motivate me. How do I get started on these goals? Well, Christina, thank you for submitting this pick me up. And what I have to say is that we all think sitting down and writing a list of goals is going to magically help us accomplish those things. That's the easy part. The hard part is looking at your life and budgeting the time to start doing those goals. But here's the thing. Writing down goals like write a book, clean out my closet, run a marathon, those are not things you can accomplish overnight. Okay, maybe the cleaning out your closet you can, but still, those are goals that you have to have a series of other smaller goals in place to actually meet before you meet those larger goals. So what I would say is before you start to pine through your life and look for motivation, look for ways to take those gigantic goals and break them up into weekly little things that you can do. That way, when you look at your to-do list and it says, brainstorm a name for your book, that task seems more manageable. It seems doable. It's the perfect kind of task to do between your work and your Netflix binging. Set a timer on your phone for 20 minutes and brainstorm titles. Then set another timer for the next day for 20 minutes and brainstorm more titles. Before you know, by the end of the week, you will have that long list, and maybe you'll have one you like and you can check that goal off your to-do list. Before you know it, you will have achieved all of those steps up the ladder, closer and closer to that bigger goal without feeling burned out, without feeling overwhelmed, without waking up in October realizing that you have done nothing for that goal you wrote down on paper. Now, motivation is a real thing, right? I mean, there's a lot of factors that make us feel unmotivated. But the cool thing about having a list of mini tasks is that you can look at that list and ask yourself, what do I want to do today? Because for a lot of us, we have to learn how to listen and trust ourselves. And in the moment, we might feel up for doing a couple of these mini tasks, but not others. Well, what if we gave into those feelings, did those mini tasks, we would make progress. So we have to learn to listen to ourselves, to figure out what we need in that moment, what we want, and trust ourselves that we will show up for ourselves and we will get these things done. Now, I also ask you for motivation. Where's a lot of your time going? And for some of us, that means tracking our time a little bit more, seeing where we waste it, how we waste it. Because by the way, and I'm not saying you do this, Christina, but I know some people listening do this, including myself. You give out energy, you output energy just by sitting on your phone scrolling through TikTok. Like you're taking energy and brain power away from yourself and putting it into your TikTok binging, which is fine, that's great. But if you're on TikTok for an hour and then you try to do something, you're gonna feel tired. You're gonna feel like you just lifted 10-pound weights for a little bit of time. That's because even those tasks where you think you're unwinding, you think you're relaxing, you're actually using brain power. So when we say we don't feel motivated, it might mean because we don't have energy. And I ask you to look at where you're spending this energy. You might be surprised. The final pick-me-up question comes from Randy. Randy says, Jen, I have this immense fear of sending certain emails. It drives me crazy because I write the email, then it lives in my drafts folder forever. I can't seem to press the send button. Most of these emails are either me putting myself out there, me asking for something, or me just doing something that's out of my comfort zone. I recently looked back at my draft folder and saw that I had 40 unsent emails over the past couple of years that would have been life-changing, game-changing to just press send on. How do I do this? How do I get over this fear? Jen, please pick me up. Well, Randy, my friend, let me tell you, it probably was such an emotional roller coaster to go back into that draft folder and look at all of those emails you didn't send. And rather than feeling suffocated by the unknowns, the what ifs of if those emails went through, just ask yourself, how do we make sure this doesn't happen again in the future? One of the things that I have done for myself when I have to send scary emails or just emails that put me out of my comfort zone, meaning I'm standing up for myself or I'm asking for something or I feel like I'm emailing somebody that I might be bothering, right? Oftentimes, like you, I will write those emails, but then I will take action on sending them. So what I mean by that is I've been using a lot of different free email programs. The one I use is Boomerang for Gmail. It's free, where you can write the email and then you can schedule it to go out later. So for example, there was an email I had to send this week that I wasn't 100% sure if I wanted to say it like I said it, but I wrote the email and I scheduled it for the next day at noon. That way I can do a gut check. So I knew the email was going to go out, and if I wanted to make any changes between then and noon, I gave myself the opportunity. But as the next day went on and noon approached, I thought, no, this is the email that I want to send. It was already scheduled to go out and I left it as is. There's other emails that I know I have to send, right? These are emails that I got to put out there, I have to do, but I'm scared that I will schedule for a couple days later to go out so that I'm not thinking about that. Now, scheduling emails I do find helps you with that fear of pressing send. But the other thing you can do is, if maybe you're scared of the email, is send it to yourself first. That way you can have time to read it, process it, and then actually send it to the person. Another tip you can try is to put a countdown clock on your phone, maybe even YouTube, like a New Year's Eve countdown soundtrack for the 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. That way what you can do is, Goofy just heard me counting down and is like, are we counting down to go to the park? No, I'm sorry, Goofs. But maybe what you can do is play the countdown track, and then when it hits 1 and it screams, Happy New Year, that's when you press send. That's just another fun way to get yourself to do that. But here's the thing. The more you do things like this, the more you put the timer on, the more you schedule things, the easier it will feel to send these emails. So look, here's what I want you to do. Go back to that draft folder. Find a couple of emails that you should have sent but you didn't, that maybe you can still send now that might mean something. I challenge you to send one of those emails today. And if there's nothing inside of that draft folder, I challenge you to just write a random email to somebody that intimidates you or scares you and say hello. Make that send button your closest, most trustworthy best friend. Make that send button something that when you press, you feel good about yourself. You're empowered to do it. And here's the thing. Make that send button something that creates opportunities for you that maybe you wouldn't have gotten if you didn't write that email. Randy, go at it, and just press send. All right, any younger listeners, thank you for listening to this week's Pick Me Up episode. I am back next week with a solo episode for you, and then we are moving and grooving into the month of February, where there is a ton of awesome new episodes happening for you. If you like this show, and by the way, I am feeling so grateful that you listen to this show, please subscribe, leave us a review on iTunes. It means the world to me. And also, come hang out with us in the secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group. There's over 1,500 incredible people just like you, hanging out, chatting, helping each other, and making just awesome connections. Plus, there's tons of things released in there that are not released anywhere else. So just come join and say hello. If you liked this episode, share it on social media. That would be awesome. Tag me at Jen Glantz, tag any younger. I will repost it. I will reshare it. Thank you in advance for spreading the love. And if you want to have a question featured on next month's Pick Me Up episode of You're Not Getting Any Younger, send it to me via DM at Jen Glantz. Send it to me via email, jenglantz@gmail.com, or share it with me as a voicemail at speakpipe.com/Jen Glantz. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz. Hey you! Thank you for listening to the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast. There are hundreds of thousands of pods out there, so thank you for listening to this one. You can find the show notes for this week's episode up on our website, anyyounger.com. Subscribe, rate, and review the You're Not Getting Any Younger podcast on iTunes so that other ears around the world can listen too. Oh, and join our secret You're Not Getting Any Younger Facebook group, where over 1,000 people are talking about how to disrupt their lives, for a good reason, to make it count. Until next week, all my love, Jen Glantz.